It is a great privilege for me to be present in this land. This is indeed a great land. It is the home of two of Africa's greatest sons, James Eamon Agri of Africa, and the Osajefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I'm also happy to report that my own daughter is married here in Ghana. And if there were any doubts at all, this is a confirmation of my Pan-Africanist credentials. Today, I've been asked to talk about the continent of Africa. And many of you will be aware that there has been no shortage of people who have spoken about Africa. But the issue of governance in Africa is an evergreen subject. And I hold the view that there is no better place to talk about governance in Africa than Accra, Ghana. We, as Africans, must ask the critical question. We introduce our currencies. You, the Ghanaians, have your cedi. The Kenyans, we have our shilling. The Angolans have their kwanza. Malawi and Zambia have their kwacha. The South African, their rand. But today, we are running away from our currencies. We are dollarizing our economies and quoting things on the basis of the dollar. And our central banks are engaged in voodoo economics, where they assume that by periodically injecting dollars in the market without the support of goods and services, that the economy will grow. That is voodoo economics, which cannot take anybody anywhere. Today, Africa continues to punch below our economic weight. The 1 billion of us, the best that we can do is to generate goods and services that is no more than $1.2 trillion, the same size as the economy of Brazil and the economy of Russia. We are not a significant player in the affairs of the world. Whenever we are invited to the dinner table of civilized nations, it is only as a favor and for tokenist purposes. Our presidents may receive 21 gun salutes, but is only humoring us. In truth, we are not treated as equals. And all this is because when we have been given the opportunity to govern ourselves, we have demonstrated that we are incapable. And we who have been given the opportunity to create systems that can run our countries, we have the penchant of bastardizing and making the absurd normal. That is the African tragedy. Africa will only liberate herself when her young men and women and our old men and women are capable of asking critical questions. Today, many African leaders are famous for the wrong things. Many African leaders, without being diplomatic about it, are thieves. Many African systems are simply kakistocratic regimes, the government of the least qualified. Many African countries are kleptocracies, a government where thieves have come together and have conspired to do only one thing, to rob their countries dry. And if the leaders of Africa are guilty, and I want to submit to you that the leaders of Africa are guilty, we, the population, are also in equal guilt. I can hear them so very loudly. But the question is, when they rise up today, Kwame Nkrumah, when he rises up, Ahmed Sekou Touré, when he rises up, Kambarage Nyerere, when he rises up, Ahmed Ben Bella when he rises up, Patrice Emery Lumumba when he rises up, Amadou Ahidjo when he rises up, Mandela when he rises up. What will we see? Doom so, doom so. Doom so in the 21st century, when in 1950s Kwame Nkrumah had said we must build the Akosombo Dam. When in 1960 Gamal Abdel Nasser said we must build the Aswan High Dam. When in 1960 Patrice Emery Lumumba had said we must build the Inga Dam. When in 1960s Haile Selassie had said we must build the Gibe Dam. In the 21st century, doom so, doom so. And it's not only in Ghana. In Gambia, they may call it by another name, but it's doom so, doom so. In Kenya, they may call it by another name, but it's doom so, doom so. In Tanzania, they may call it Mgao or Umeme, but it's doom so, doom so. This doomsorization of African countries must stop. And the reason why I think it should stop, God is so very generous to us. This is the only continent that has the sun throughout. This is the only continent that has wind throughout. This is the only continent that has rivers throughout. The divine instruction was, go ye and subdue the world, but we have allowed the world to subdue us. How shall we account for both man and divinity on the day of judgment? That we were given the opportunity and we refuse to seize it, that even when opportunity sits on our laps, we never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. The problem is governance. And let us not abuse the English language. It is misgovernance. You know, they used to say that there is something called primitive accumulation. Many African leaders suffer from primitive accumulation, which is reminiscent of the hunter-gatherer instincts. If in the Middle Ages we hunted and gathered wild animals, the things that we now hunt and gather are houses and cars and money. And the tragedy is that we keep them in Europe and America. We keep them in Switzerland. We don't even tell our wives. And when we die, the Swiss enjoy them. Our creed is greed. This is the tragedy. But we know where the problem is. Beyond the lamentation, what must we do going forward? Because this is the question. A great European writer, Arthur Koestler, writing his book, Darkness at Noon, says that the tragedy of the world is that sometimes when you diagnose the disease and you think you have an antidote and you apply the antidote, a new wound appears. There was a time in Africa when we thought that our problem was disunity and we thought that one-party states would solve our problems. We applied that balm and a new wound appeared. The new wound was personified in Africa in different people, Mobutu Sese Seko Kukumbendu wa Zambanga, the man who bestrode the Congolese territory like a colossus. He thought he was God's gift to Zaire. But when he died, he did not even have a piece of earth to be buried in. His mortal remains lie in Morocco. It is a lesson to African leaders. Then we thought that the military would solve our problems, and we danced. Africans are good at dancing at every opportunity. When we were expelling the first generation leaders, we danced. When the military came in, we danced. When they went out, we danced. When the guerrilla leaders came in, we danced. When they went out, we danced. When we elect our leaders, we dance. When they mess up, we dance. We must stop dancing. We have danced for too long. We must now think. The great René Descartes was right. Cogito ergo sum. I think, so I am. Africans must now begin thinking, because going forward, it is our ability to think that will ensure that we are creative and innovative. You know, if you allow me a little latitude about our inability to think, not so long ago, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, visited Kenya. There was a lockdown in Nairobi. You had a similar lockdown in Accra when he visited for 8 hours. Americans came to shock and awe us, and they shocked us and they awed us. A few days later, I was traveling to my rural home, and I sat at the airport, and next to me were 3 professionals, one an architect, one a lawyer, one an expert in pension, and they were marveling about the American president's car, the Beast. And I said to myself, in a world where other civilizations are thinking about nanotechnology, we are marveling about a car. We are marveling about a car. We are marveling about a car. It is a statement of our mental underdevelopment. And that mental underdevelopment.
You're welcome back. And that was Professor PLO Patrick Locke Otieno Lumumba, or the director of the Kenya School of Law, and he was here in Accra on the 28th of August at the Alisa Hotel at the invitation of the PAV Ansar Memorial Foundation to do that presentation just on good governance in Africa, and just a bit of it for you to chew on. Now, my guests are seated, and I'll introduce them to you so we begin the discussion right away. Abdul Malik Kweku Bako is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Yao Opong is legal practitioner and lecturer, Central University College. Dr. Clement Apark is presidential staffer. Nana Akomia is Director of Communications of the opposition New Patriotic Party. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Thank you.
Good as always to have you. Now, we do preliminary comments, just pick your mind briefly on 2 critical issues that happened in the course of the week. The President, John Dramani Mahama, sent his Vice President to go to the headquarters of the NDC to pick the nominations forms for him to contest as President. We know that a few things have happened as a result of the presidential contest of the NDC. The General Secretary of the NDC has described the man who has indicated intention to contest the President as a man who needs mental help, psychiatric help. The Majority Leader of Parliament, Alban Suman Bagbing, who has done over 2 decades in Parliament, also picked his forms, I think just yesterday, has also described, he's going for the 7th time, he's also described Mr. George Boateng, the man who intends to contest the President, as a man who is out there to give all of us some comic relief, and compares him, many appear to compare him with Charles Entry, the man who was incarcerated for attempting to assassinate the President, allegedly. Well, some say the two have one goal. They all want to be president. You are also aware that some Ghanaians in Togo took journalists around some places in that country and sought to suggest that Dr. Barima got it all wrong, coming to suggest to this country that the voters register was replete with in excess of 76,000 persons who were registered both in the Togolese voters register and also on Ghana's voters register. They say Dr. Barima has not done any good by bringing forth that information, and that, in fact, he could not have laid hands on the Togolese voters register. It's not available to anybody, not even to the parties that are in Togo. Is he right? And does his point put Barimia's claims to put? Is that the case? Well, let's look at those issues briefly, and then we'll deal with the district assembly elections. We'll deal with MPP and its new problems. It looks like now it is specializing in just creating bad news for itself. And then we'll also look at the question I asked about the presidency and its man in charge of the press, picking journalists, recorders, and smashing them, and admitting to saying and promising to replace the recorder. Well, somehow the Media Foundation for West Africa has already replaced that recorder. But what does this say about press freedom here in this country, and how the presidency at the apex has to do about the same process? I'll start with you, Nana. The Ghanaians in Togo say Dr. Barima couldn't have had access to Ghana's, to Togo's voters register. Their spokesperson, Joseph Hammond, says it was impossible for anyone to lay his hands on the document. Not even political parties in Togo have access to the register. What do you say to that?
Thank you, Samson. Let me wish my friends here a good Saturday morning, also your viewers a good Saturday. When I heard some clip on the radio, some people purporting to be Ghanaians in Togo talking about the NPP's case for a new register for Ghana. And they said that they doubted the authenticity of the register that Dr. Barima had used to illustrate the cross-border registrations. And then they said it was not possible to get a Togolese register and all kinds of stuff. I found it difficult to understand the case that they were making. The case that Dr. Barima has made, and which the NPP has made, is a very simple one. We're saying that this is the Ghanaian register. This is the Togolese register. When we look at the faces, we can find cross-border registrations. That is, people registered on the Ghanaian register and on the Togolese register. And so far, we have found over 70,000 of these cross-border registrations.
And he speaks to the core of your claim. He says you could not have had access to the Togolese voters register. What you have done, maybe what Professor Lumumba says is voodoo analysis, or wherever you got it from. And I was just saying a while ago that voodoo economics, we had Kukubako make that verdict some time ago about this voodoo economics. But he says you didn't have the register in the first place, so no point.
So what I'm saying to you is that what Barima has done is to present the two registers. And he's saying that when you look at the two registers, you can find so many cross-border registrations on the Ghanaian register and the Togolese register. That's the case Dr. Barima has made. Now, if anybody wanted to express doubt, I would have thought that the first thing they would do is to bring what they purport to be the Togolese register and say, this is the Togolese register as they lodge with the Electoral Commission of Togo. And it is different from what Dr. Barima has used. Then a case, we can see that the case is being made. But the man has presented the register and said, this is the Togolese register. You are saying this is not the Togolese register. Where is your version of the Togolese register? In any case, we haven't heard the Electoral Commission of Togo come out to say that they have no knowledge or even how Dr. Barima acquired it is not the most important thing. Is it authentic? That is the important thing. So if anybody was going to...
Again, you say that we have not heard the Togolese Electoral Commission disputes.
Yes.
That, you know, this is what it is.
Yes.
Well, we have heard from government circles that, you know, Ghana's mission contacted them and they denied flatly that you have access to the register.
Well, we haven't mentioned the Ghana government. And the Ghana government is telling us what it wants. We are saying that we've acquired the Togolese register. It is up to the Togolese Electoral Commission, not the Ghana government, to come and tell us
Interesting.
if the register is truly the Togolese one or not.
Interesting.
Not the government of Ghana.
Dr. Park, what do you say?
Well, first of all, let me say good morning to you.
It's a fair demand, right? If you say this is not the Togolese register as Barima has exhibited, show yours.
Well, first of all, let me say good morning to your viewers, to my co-panelists, and to greet the people of Busa South. I know they are watching.
Why Busa South?
That's where he's contesting.
Because I am going to be filing my nomination
But you just became
forms.
a presidential aide a couple of months ago.
But is there
and
a
you are
law-
going to remove somebody
Is
from
there a law
parliament.
that prevents me from contesting?
Oh. It's an NDC seat.
The PNC
No,
says
it's
you are engaged in
Or is
an
it PNC?
unfair
Well,
process.
we would engage
Is it a PNC?
in that debate another time.
That they have a
But
pact with you and that you, the NDC, cannot be trusted.
in as far as I know,
You shouldn't have contested them
none
in
of
that area.
my leaders has drawn my attention to that.
Okay,
But the last time I checked, there was an NDC candidate who contested
right.
in 2008 who was beaten by the current PNC and then contested again in 2012.
But
So-
the PNC's candidate has collaborated with you in parliament and even in government. So
but this is a
the
primary.
expectation was
There is
that
even no guarantee that I'm going to be the candidate.
the way the NPP was doing for Freddie Blay, you remember?
Well, that is between them and the party. But as far as the constituents are concerned, they have a right to decide who
Okay.
should lead them.
So what do you say? It's a fair
In any
demand,
case-
isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't agree that it's a fair demand. I think the issue of quote-unquote a bloated voters register and the presence of so-called foreigners in that register and even an attribution of a number within the context of the way the NPP went about it raises a lot of questions.
And that number only represents 10%.
And that is part of the
search.
case. If you ask me, all of this was part of a scheme to try and present a semblance of unity, which in itself has crumbled, as we are beginning to see. But if you look at the way the whole event was organized and orchestrated, seeing hitherto fairly recognized partners who were not in good terms sitting together, it was designed to sort of take attention away from the internal wranglings of the NPP, and we know that that has not worked. But be as it may,
to the facts.
yes, I will. But it is important to put things into perspective. Be as
If
it
the
may,
NPP wants to show a semblance that they are
be
united,
be as it may.
they have to use a voters
Of
register
course,
issue.
Of course, you have to look for something that can sort of camouflage and become so dominant and consume
They can simply
the
call a
public's
meeting
attention
and say,
so that you don't think about what is going on.
Japan, there's nothing
They
wrong
have
with
tried
us.
it and it hasn't worked. And this
Okay.
was another strategy which
All
has
right,
failed.
please proceed on the
But be as
substantive
it may,
matter.
if you look at the case that the MPP has made, which Nana Akomia tried very hard to justify, it really cannot stand the test of time. First of all, this is the same register that we used for the 2012 elections, on the basis for which the MPP went to court, seeking to be granted reliefs, including...
See, we don't want to do new arguments about
but
this because we have
something-
debated
it's not
this like
fair.
on two different
But
occasions on this platform.
is not happening
we are
in
looking,
isolation
we are looking
of the history.
briefly at the counter that has come from the so-called
Yes.
Ghanaians
Yes,
in Togo
but I
group.
have a responsibility to educate the good people of Ghana and to let them understand why this is happening and why those who have gone all the way out in Togo to demonstrate the flawed argument that the MPP is trying to make have every right to do so. Now, granting that we don't even want to talk about the register, the fact that that is what we used in 2012 on the basis for which the MPP went to court seeking a number of reliefs, including being awarded the presidency, the fact that their members of parliament were elected on the same register, the fact that the recent district assembly elections were held based on the same register. They speak about what they call facial recognition technology. And if you examine the data that they presented, even on the face value of juxtaposing the so-called representatives, the pictures. I mean, some of them, even a visual, analysis with the layman's eyes like mine, you will see that the pictures were not even the same. The data on the so-called voters register, Ghana versus Togo, certainly a lot of them presented issues. But be as it may, it is not entirely unusual for people to have dual nationalities. We know for a fact that there are Ghanaians living in Cote d'Ivoire and there are Ivorians also living in Ghana. Some of them have dual nationalities. And in as far as the law allows them, they should be able to vote. But I have seen information circulating on social media where none less a person than Barima Osei Asare is clearly, legally, a British citizen. And he has been voting in Ghana.
What's the problem about that?
Well, that is the point. So if there are Ghanaians in Togo who come to vote,
I don't see that as any revelation.
that is the point.
We have many.
So on what basis is the NPP making the case?
Just
that
last week,
those in Togo who come to vote are Togolese.
Just last week, Alfred Oko van der Poel announced that he's denouncing his citizenship as an American.
But Samson,
because he wants to contest as a parliamentarian.
You are making the case
What I'm saying is that there's nothing new about that.
But you are making the case I'm making. This is exactly why the MPP's argument is flawed. Because
but he didn't have to denounce that citizenship to vote in Ghana. Is that the point you're making?
Choice. That is his choice. But if Gabi can vote in the UK and vote in Ghana, why can't a Ghanaian in Togo vote in Togo and vote in Ghana? I mean, I simply don't see
that
this as
there
an
is
issue.
every rationality and logic in documents that have been analyzed only up to 10%, revealing 76,000 of an entire population being dual nationals who must have a right to vote in Ghana and Togo.
Samson.
You believe that?
It is not impossible. It is not impossible. If you look at the history of Africa, the history of West Africa, it is not impossible. But the point I'm trying to make is that even that claim is being refuted by the recent evidence that you yourself have pointed out regarding this group, which has certainly provided enough evidence to discredit the claims that Dr. Barima is making. We cannot accept that the argument that Dr. Barima is making has been accepted.
Let me show you, for example, let's speak to this. This is one of the pictures that was shown. Don't they match? Isn't it the same person? Isn't this the same person?
No, remember that I made an argument.
Yes.
I said some of them don't match.
Some
the
of them
information doesn't match. And even if it did,
almost all of them, they look like this.
I am saying even if it did.
They do match.
I said even if it did.
There's no argument about the identities of the persons on those pictures.
You are a lawyer. I'm making a case here. I am saying most of them don't match. The information does not collaborate, or, I mean, they don't cross-verify. But even if they did, in the example of Gabi, who can vote in the UK and vote in Ghana, there is certainly no reason why that is not possible.
I don't know if you see the point in this Gabi thing. I don't get it.
Well, good morning. Well, that is if the claim is correct.
No,
I mean, the law permits a person whose nationality was, as it were, was taken away as a result of the law that barred Ghanaians from holding or being a citizen of Ghana and a citizen of another country. And now the amendment now permits that under Section 16, a citizen of Ghana who, as a result of the law in Ghana, which prohibited the holding of dual citizenship by a Ghanaian, may, on an application to a minister, be issued with a certificate of citizenship, which shall be effective from the date of issue. And that at least entitles that person. The other day we discussed the Asare case, to also register to vote. But my point is that in the case of such a person, there must be evidence that you have gone through the procedure to make you a dual citizen. The fact that one of your parents is a Ghanaian and another is in the UK, is a citizen of the UK, or the fact that you were a citizen of the UK and you used to be a citizen of Ghana does not automatically make you a dual citizen, as I understand it. You must go through a process after the amendment. For example, the issuance of the certificate under Section 16.5 to make you a dual citizen. But reading the what you just brought out, is it Ghanaians who are also Togolese who are talking about this? Or is it Ghanaians living in Togo but who are just Ghanaians? We would like to understand, because if the person is a Ghanaian but is ordinarily resident in Togo, then there will be no law that may prevent him, with the exception of the few provisions that deal with the fact that the person should cumulatively, for a number of years, live in a particular constituency. With the exception of that, that person is entitled to vote, at least in a presidential election. So we would like to understand. And moving on, I
don't, because you are reading the Citizenship Act and making references to the need for the certification and everything else. I don't want us to concentrate the argument in that area. I want us to strictly speak to the reaction that is coming from Togo. But because you have brought that, let me just, read the case you said we discussed, and we discussed this privately. Just read that portion, which is critical, and then have your final take on it. And this was a case in 2012, in which Professor Stephen Asare, whom we all know, went to the Supreme Court and sought to ask for a number of things. And this is what the court had to say about dual nationality and the need earlier for one to have a certain document that certifies that you are a dual citizen. This is what the court said, that to the extent that the administrative requirement is voluntary, is mandatory, and conditions the exercise of the rights of dual citizens on it, I would regard it as unconstitutional. If the card, that's a dual citizenship card that one was required mandatorily to have, if the card is intended to be optional and to ease the exercise by dual nationals of their rights, then it will be constitutional. In other words, dual citizens are citizens by operation of the Constitution. Please take note of that. Yeah. Dual citizens are citizens by operation of the Constitution and do not need any mandatory documents before exercising their rights of citizenship. In the same way as sole citizens do not need any mandatory document before exercising their rights as citizens. However, if the state wishes to assist dual nationals in the enjoyment of their rights by providing them with evidence of their dual nationality, this would be permissible. What is not lawful or constitutional is for the state to prescribe that without possession of a dual nationality card, a dual national may not exercise his or her rights granted under the Constitution. So, I mean, the rest of the things to read may not be necessary.
Yeah. Well, it's because you brought Gabi's issue. But my point is that, you see, then the court failed to define who is a dual citizen. Because the section...
No, I'm not interested in what the court failed to do. By this verdict,
yes.
What does it mean? Does it mean they need these requirements you're talking about?
Well, in my view, yes, because you must, first of all, be regarded as a dual citizen. And by that, there should be a process or a procedure prescribed by the law. Because then anybody who was a citizen of the UK before this amendment and has no even...
The court says you don't need any document, mandatory document.
What I'm saying is that the law has prescribed a procedure. And for me, I mean, the law is also clear that when the law prescribes a procedure and when the law conflicts with even a decision of a court, however exalted, it is the court's decision, the law that prevails over it.
Strikes down this provision.
Well, it can be per incuriam.
No, that's what
but
it has done.
Let's not go into
Okay, thank you. Yes.
A little point, I'm just looking through. My friend has kindly lent me his constitution. I'm just looking at the section on dual citizenship. Clause 8.
Clause 8 of Article 6?
Of Article 6, yeah.
Okay.
And it says that, I don't know how to impact on what you are discussing with my friend. It says, subject to this article, a citizen of Ghana shall cease forthwith to be a citizen of Ghana if on attaining the age of 21 years, he, by voluntary act other than marriage, acquired or retains the citizenship of a country other than Ghana. This is what the Constitution says. I don't know how it will impact.
That was
the amendment cannot amend the Constitution. Oh.
No, that portion
was a
has been
constitutional
amended.
amendment.
Yes.
So
And
okay.
now it permits
Okay.
duality. Anyway, so but my
let's
point,
move away
yes,
from.
we
Let's
are
talk
moving
about
away.
this Togolese
My
issue.
point really is that I do not really see the controversy or the need for this controversy. Somebody has made a claim, and that claim is a very sensitive claim, which goes into the sovereignty of this nation and our governance system. I think that the best thing to do is for the appropriate institution to investigate these claims that have been made, and if they are found to be credible, then the appropriate amendments or remedial procedures should commence. But if we just brush it aside, especially where we understood by that what you read, that some people in Togo are saying that under no circumstance should a Togolese voters register be in the possession of any other person. It's so surprising to me. Then I wonder, with all due respect to them, how they are able...
actually claims that the parties in Togo don't have access to the voters register.
And that is why I'm saying that would be strange indeed. Are they saying they don't even open their registers for people to go and check? They don't even give it to individuals. They don't give them to political parties. They don't give them to persons who want to present themselves to be elected. That would be a very strange governance system, with all due respect to them, that they are practicing. And that is why, for me, it casts some doubt on that claim by those people as well. I think that at the end, it should be the Electoral Commission to investigate, and if it's credible, appropriate remedial measures should be taken.
Myself and my production, we have been trying to actually get the Togo's EC or the parties to confirm if the parties indeed are not allowed to have access to the register as this gentleman claims. Koko, what do you say about this new,
Well. Last week, if you recall, I actually made a certain submission that comes close to this in terms of why the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ghana mission in Togo have been silent on some media reports that claimed that the Ghana mission had gone ahead and contacted the Togo INEC, and they had come to a certain agreement to the effect that one, the Togo register was something that was under serious, hardcore security guard, inaccessible to anybody, as well as to even the parties in Togo. And then to the effect that no Ghanaian entity had formally requested for a copy of their report, register. You recall? I'm still surprised that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ghana embassy in Togo are silent. That is interesting. That silence is very conspicuous, very loud. And it is within this loud silence that I perceive a certain mischief being generated. And the way this thing is going is such that it could even undermine the integrity of the EC's investigations into this matter. There's an obvious attempt to intrude, bring into this whole thing some level of ugly politicization so as to disable the EC from coming to a certain conclusion.
Or to
now,
stampede the EC into a certain conclusion.
Yes, either way, it's ugly. Either way, it undermines the integrity of the process. It doesn't create an environment for all of us to eventually agree on what the EC will do, because there are preemptive shots here and there to distort and pollute the environment deliberately. I still call on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ghana mission in Togo to clarify the situation. But please, the Togo EC or INEC, you know that it has representation of the opposition parties on.
Right.
That's the system they operate today. So what are we talking about? First of all, Bawumia, in his former statement, this is what he said. In this regard, I'm quoting from page 8. In this regard, our investigative team obtained the Togo voters register, which was publicly displayed prior to the 2015 Togolese elections. Apparently, no hint that there was a formal application for it. Okay? So, and last week, if required, I did an apology here for my own misrepresentation of the issue. So what are we talking about? The opposition parties who are members of the Togo INEC, though in the minority, have no access to the register that was displayed publicly even before elections. That whole thing is a fallacy. And as he said, strange. It's completely unsustainable. Two, where is the evidence that the Togo INEC has spoken? The gentleman who leads the Ghanaian residents there even refers to the Togo INEC boss's purported statement, which is what was captured in the media reports earlier, black and white. But he didn't provide anything of evidential value.
Not so far.
And so far, Togo INEC has not spoken formally and publicly. But we have been invited to actually seek refuge in that thing, as if it's a gospel truth. Now, one intriguing thing. Fortunately, I realized that the Daily Post of today's edition has published the full statement of the Ghanaian group.
Okay.
And there's a very interesting paragraph. It says, "We are tenants with our neighbors, and all you could do is to provoke them into sacking us. Most of us here are from the 10 regions of Ghana." I'm just wondering, has any of them seen their picture on that registered Barima displayed? They are telling us they are Ghanaians, bona fide Ghanaians, only staying in Togo as tenants. There's a certain register that has been put out there as the Togolese register. And I have said that I have no means of authenticating even that register.
So they have not answered the critical question of whether or not they could vote in Togo and in Ghana.
Yes, and whether or not they are on that register Barima has put out there, so as to endanger them. Because if the Togolese law or the Togo laws do not allow them to vote there, and yet they have been captured on it and have been exposed inadvertently by Barima, then they are endangered. That's the logic.
Okay.
I'm just asking, have they seen their pictures on that register? The one that has been put out by Barima, the one we have been invited to have doubts about, so that they've been endangered. Then we can start checking. You are a Ghanaian, you find yourself on the Togolese register. Well, if the Togo law doesn't allow it, they will be dealing with you.
Exactly.
If you are a Ghanaian indeed, and you are on the Ghana register, what's the big deal? If we check your eligibility relative to the electoral laws, then what's the big deal? It means you are okay.
Right. Because all you need to be registered in Ghana to vote is that you are Ghanaian.
That's it. So, you see, they are raising issues really clouded in some, I don't know, it's the preemptive mischief that I'm talking about. And I hope they are not being used.
Right. Interesting comments there. Now, let's